Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Thank you so much for inviting us here. And special thanks to Kumar Vijendra Shekharji and our own Professor Rakesh Mehrotraji for putting this together. There's an American saying which says, you should never be caught playing checkers when your opponent is playing chess. And that's the purpose of this book. As Rajiv ji mentioned, we just don't want to see India playing checkers while the globalists are playing chess. Now, recently, there was a huge media outcry, I don't know if you all are familiar with, where Shiv Nadar schools, right? They had a survey for children. And in their survey, they had given an option for children, little children, to choose non-binary as an option for their sex. Male, female, and non-binary. And the parents were shocked, saying, our children don't know this, and how is this showing up in a survey? So if you go down the route of these kinds of problems, you will understand where these things are coming from and why they are showing up in these ways, in simple ways. So schools have started seeing these little symptoms here and there, and people are like, is this a one-off thing? Or there was another elite school in Delhi where a hairy male, actually a female, but with hormones and everything, had transitioned and was nursing a baby, right? And this was taught in a very elite school in Delhi to children to make them sensitive to trans issues. So as Rajiv ji mentioned, there is this engine of sustainable development goals. And within those sustainable development goals, there's all and sundry, everything under the sky comes under that, under these goals. And one of the goals is education. Under the education umbrella, we have 4 main topics. So one is something called global citizenship education, which Rajiv ji briefly mentioned. Then there's environmental education. Then there's comprehensive sexuality education. And there is social emotional learning. We have a glossary at the end of the book. Marxists love 3-letter jargon, acronyms. So it's littered with these sorts of nice sounding, wholesome kind of words, acronyms, but you should be very familiar with them because hidden within them is the poison. And they tend to obfuscate the truth and with the clever use of language. So all these are sold as durable skills, 21st century skills, things like holistic, evidence-based. You'll see all of that. And you'll think, oh, that's good if it's evidence-based. It's great. And then you go down the rabbit hole of what is the evidence that they're citing. And then you will find there'll be 3 NGOs who are producing papers and there's a circular reference among themselves. And that is the body of evidence. So every rabbit hole that you enter, it's problematic. So anyway, so I'm going to briefly highlight a few of these educational things that are among these 4. Global citizenship education is teaching little kids to take on the problems of the world, right? Kindergarten kids. And this is happening even in the US, where little kids are taught that, there's poverty and hunger in the world. And so maybe today you guys should skip lunch. This is at kindergarten, age 5, 6. You skip lunch and see what hunger is. And you might say, what's wrong with that? Right? But they're not at an age to understand this. And you're brainwashing them slowly to take on the problems of the world, which they are not responsible for. And I'll come to the reason as to why this is being done. The other thing is the older kids are talked about migrants, right? It's okay to have migrants. We have to be compassionate. And so tomorrow our children may be taught to let in the Rohingya migrants and allow the Khalistani problem to continue, allow the Kashmir issue to continue, because from an idea of global citizenship, it's okay, because the globalists do not want boundaries, and the idea of nationhood itself is in question. So these are, again, national security issues through education. Now, the second thing is environmental education, which is, again, making sacrifices for, there's this tremendous anxiety built around carbon footprint, and every youngster is about carbon footprint and going green and having them eat bugs and all kinds of things like this. This tremendous anxiety. It's like Greta Thunberg saying, how dare you? It's this deep inner anxiety among young people. The whole world is going to come to an end. So that's the environmental education. And today I'll focus mainly on comprehensive sexuality education and SEL. So comprehensive sexuality education, again, Marxists are very good at language manipulation. So it is not sex education as you might think. So there was the old-fashioned sex education where it taught young people about their changing bodies during adolescence, and it talked about sexually transmitted diseases, unwanted pregnancies, and the risk of sexual behavior and things like that. But comprehensive sexuality education is something totally different. It's, that is out with the old and in with the new. It is about sex positivity. It's about teaching children desires and going out and seeking them. Everything is about positive ideas of sexuality. And you might ask, what is wrong with that? Why are you being a prude? There's nothing wrong with sexuality. But the partners of the UN are people like International Planned Parenthood Foundation, whose member association is the Family Planning Association of India. And they come up with these very graphic books, how-to books. These are considered pornography if I brought it here and showed it to you, because they're explicit sexual acts to teach children. And these are the ways you can get pleasure. You have to go into the WHO definition of a young person. So you say, okay, what is young person? A young person is anyone from 10 to 21. So a 10-year-old will be taught this. So, and masturbation is a huge theme. Young children are taught that it's okay to masturbate. And this has happened in Jharkhand as a pilot project for the past 10 to 14 years. The tribals are being weaponized. Instead of uplifting the tribals and the scheduled tribes, the scheduled castes, and the poor people in the hinterlands, we've allowed some of the NGOs to come in and train them on this. Masturbation is a big theme. In fact, there are schools in Canada which send young children in kindergarten to go to separate rooms and sort of feel themselves. I'm not making this up. And I do not want to be talking about these subjects, but if our children are being exposed to this, we as adults should be able to handle it. And hence I'm bringing this up. So while these plans are in place, the front line, these kinds of things, is happening in Europe, where in the Netherlands, they consider human being is a sexual being, and sexuality starts at zero, at infancy, at birth. So you can see WHO consultants talking to toddlers, encouraging them to touch themselves and saying, do you feel good if you touch here? 3-year-olds. I'm not making it up. This is not happening yet here in India, but this is what's coming. Once you get desensitized, if a 10-year-old can do it, what the heck? A 5-year-old can do it, and maybe a 3-year-old also can. What the heck? And so that's where this is going. And then this whole thing on teaching children about this whole fluidity of gender. So when Trump came in, he said, first thing he said was there are only 2 genders and that's all, we'll recognize it. There's a huge problem when you say there are all kinds of genders and there are 72 genders and sexual identities. It's a nightmare from a legal standpoint as well. You have men who have fetishes, who identify as a woman and enter female prisons and rape everybody. And that's a law enforcement problem. Which bathrooms do you use? Is it affecting the safety of women? We have Upasana ji represents women. I'm sure women do not like men with penises, even though they're dressed as women, entering women's spaces. It makes us very vulnerable. So these are huge issues. And you might say, okay, it's happening outside. It's not happening in India, so we're okay. But unfortunately, that's not the story. This has entered All India Institute of Medical Sciences, where in the name of world standard, the big world organizations create standards and they say these are the UN standards, and everybody's like, oh, WHO standards, UNESCO standards, these must be, American Pediatric Institute standards, so it must be fine. But India's now adopted this whole thing of there's just not 2 genders and there could be gender fluidity, and the Pediatric Association has accepted that. However, they have not gone into gender transitioning through chemical castration and things like that yet. But they want to. But there is a tremendous push in the Indian Institute of Pediatrics to accept these world standards through comprehensive sexuality education. The children are brainwashed from a very tiny age. If you're feeling low, they are said, okay, maybe you're uncomfortable in your body. Maybe you want to be a boy. If your parents think you're a girl, you can try out different clothes. So you socially transition first into the other gender and try it out. There's social celebration when you declare yourself as non-binary or trans, and then everybody applauds you, and then the kids feel okay, happy. And then the next step is chemical transition, which is they give you something called puberty blockers, and then the community will tell you that these puberty blockers it just pauses puberty and nothing happens. And then whenever you want to switch back, you can just stop the hormones and the blockers, and you'll be fine. But these are actually castration medication. These are the same medications that are used to castrate pedophiles in prisons. right? And that's the same medication that they use, and it has long-term impact on children's sexual health. They are left sterile, and this is all because we are socially engineering these kids to adopt these alternate lifestyle. We are all for Rajiv ji and myself, and most of us are all compassionate for people who are transsexual or transvestites. And our society has always been accepting of these kinds of people. There's nothing wrong with it, but to bring it to the center and constantly indoctrinate children, that is a problem. Now, CSE, however, Comprehensive Sexuality Education, is marketed as teaching kids about consent, communication, setting boundaries, and empowerment. And the other thing it does is it tells children that you go out and you enjoy all these things, experience sexuality and your desires. There's nothing wrong with it. And abortion is sort of treated as something that can be managed. As much as we all want access to abortion clinics for young people, they want to have laws where children don't tell their parents about these things. And also, abortion is something that you can manage. There are morning after pills. So India's actually had the abortion law, has gone from 21 weeks of gestation to 24 weeks. We've extended it. This is again pressure from the World Organization that 24 weeks fetus is viable. It's a live, viable fetus, and there's a huge market for harvesting, for research. These dead fetuses which they abort. So there's another whole market that goes after the pharmaceutical market. And civilizationally, this is, Bruna Hatya is Mahapap, civilizationally, because in the Upanishad also you talk about the, Pancha Agni Vidya of Chandogya Upanishad, which talks about how the jiva, there's a transmigration. And so life is always there. So anytime you murder, this is Bruna Hatya, which is a serious matter and should not be taken lightly. India in 2015 had 1.6 crore abortions, and we just looked the other way, letting international Western organizations come and promote abortion as a solution to these sexual activities. So that is the comprehensive sexuality education. Now, the result of all this is they want to make sexual rights a human right, which means very soon, if that happens, and that's the push in the United Nations. So if you make sexual rights a human right, then the children don't have to listen to you. You as a parent have no say. So a kid can, without, even if I'm below 18, then this is none of your business because it's my fundamental human right. Human right is very fundamental. It goes to even children. So when you see sexual rights as a human right, then it's a problem. That's why we protect minors. We have that POXO Act and all of that to protect minors. So this has entered RKSK, the Rashtriya Kishore Swasthya Karikram. This is a Government of India program. Swasthya, it's interesting, Swasthya essentially means Swasmin Swarupe Tishtati. The one you're considered healthy if you are in your original state. Gender transition and all this is exactly the opposite of even that word. So with sexual rights becoming human rights, the age of consent, so there's a huge push, which fortunately the Law Commission shot it down because the UNICEF had messed with the data. There was a huge push to bring down the age of consent for sexuality from 18 to 16. Because the UNICEF essentially said that there were many cases where adolescents were engaged in sexual activity and they were given these punishments. But it's actually not true because they were citing a 19-year-old having some affair with a 17-year-old considered a minor still. And they brought these cases up saying the 19-year-old is not quite an adult yet. And, and these are settled, these kinds of cases in our system are settled in special courts. But the UNICEF, through another NGO, managed to falsify some data, and the Law Commission caught it, and they ruled it down because they wanted to push the Niti Aayog to bring down the age for sexual consent to 16. So on one side, we have programs that are sexualizing our kids. On the other side, we have laws that are decriminalizing sexual activity younger and younger. Yeah, so these are the dots that Rajiv ji said that you should connect. And then you start seeing the picture of where this whole thing is going. And on the third side, we have a law which is, I think, in the interim, it's almost agreed upon, but it's going to pass soon, to increase the age of marriage of a girl from 18 to 21. So for Muslims, it's 15. Muslim girl can still get married at 15. In the US, in California, the most progressive state in the US, there is no age at all, for getting married. Anyone, as long as the parent, if you're a 13-year-old girl and you wish to get married, and your parent or your guardian, and if you happen to be a minor, your parent or your guardian agrees that you're cool to get married. So we do not want to encourage marriage in this country. We're trying to bring the girl's age to 21 from 18. So it's okay to have sex at 16, but we don't want them to get married till 21. So that's again another dot that you see through education. So and all the time you are teaching children about abortions. You're saying go after risky sexual behavior, enjoy yourself, and try out different genders and different partners and polyamory and all kinds of things. Everything is open. So social emotional learning again sounds very good. Who does not want their children to be socially adept and emotionally balanced? Yeah, who wouldn't want? But again, it's another ideological program for mind control and conformity. The social emotional learning is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it develops programs to teach children to manage their emotions and behaviors. They use behavioral science, neuroscience, and psychology to manipulate young minds. So this is what our forefathers used to do for samskaras. You put in good samskaras early on so that you train the mind in a certain way. And these same ideas of mind sciences is what they're using, but to rewire the brain and make activists. So the end result is to make activists out of children. The roots of social emotional learning actually comes from India, from Neem Karoli Baba, and there were other people who learned. So we give the history of all of that, very interesting history. And these ideas from India have been taken, and they've been distorted, and then have been taken to control young people's mind. And it's essentially becoming a social credit system for individuals. These are called 21st century skills, and the UN says that these are the most important skills in education. No math, no reading, no computer science, nothing. Social emotional learning is the most important skill, according to the United Nations experts. There is a huge amount of data. So when a child is doing mathematics, the problem will be about some social justice problem. There is a poor person or a transgender trying to take a bus and go to a place somewhere, and then these social justice subjects are introduced. So every subject has these social justice topics in the name of math or science or whatever, and then the topics are discussed. And the children are asked, to say how they feel, with happy face, sad face, the pain level you can mark. So they're constantly surveyed. So over a period of K to 12, you have enormous amounts of data on your child, which you did not as a parent sign up to give. And that's why these companies, all these, Microsoft and all these companies, Facebook, are all funding these projects, because they get enormous amounts of data of children from funding these programs. And they take this data, and tomorrow, you can say your child has criminal tendencies, or your child makes bad choices, so his health could be bad, and his health insurance therefore should be charged higher. Or you could nudge a child to do certain, you can to buy certain things. So these are all dangerous things for our children, as it is with social media. We have it right here in Delhi, UNESCO, as Rajiv ji mentioned. It's called MGIEP, which is Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education, Sustainability and Peace, or something like that. Yeah, again, very nice. Mahatma Gandhi, sustainability, peace, what could be wrong? But, they have a vision of building kinder brains, holistic, whole brain learner, building SEL skills with emotional resilience. In their own literature, they talk about how they purposely create something called cognitive dissonance in children. And of course, India is very proud, because we have tier 1 UNESCO office institution on our very soil. Taxpayer money was spent to get it, just to get a chance to host UNESCO in Delhi. We're so proud. So they say we give children 2 conflicting sustainable development goals. So you could talk about world hunger, and then you can say you can't, but you can't eat. So the child has something called cognitive dissonance, right? They don't know how to, reconcile these 2 ideas. right? They want to have a safe border, but then there are Rohingya Muslims outside. And should they be compassionate, or should they drive them away? So this is cognitive dissonance. As an adult, we are able to handle it. But as a child, you're talking 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way till college. And even SEL is being taught in college. And they don't know how to handle it. So they get stressed out, which then manifests as anxiety, depression, anger, guilt, or fear. So they put the mind, so using neuroscience, psychology, and behavioral science, they put fear or guilt into the person's, into a child's mind. And then it comes social emotional learning. And social emotional learning is supposed to teach the child to manage this manifested, feeling that you have of guilt or fear. If you have guilt because you're the one who's oppressing everybody else, and you're the one that's privileged, that gets to eat 3 good meals a day, then you are the one that has to go out and fight and be an ally, sacrifice what you have, go fight for social justice, like Greta Thunberg, from a Scandinavian country fighting for the environment. So, and if you are, on the other hand, if you're the oppressed, all of that, you again fight for social justice, because that's the right thing to do. So education is, these are the 21st century skills that they're trying to teach. And MGIEP is signing MOUs every day at every university. Right? Every day you will find teachers saying, oh, I am an SEL qualified, certified teacher. And they have platforms now. They're certifying many teachers, and they have peer leaders. Another very good thing that both sex education and the social emotional learning people do is they recruit peer educators. The Indian Math Olympiad team has been doing exceptionally well the past 2 years, because they've won many medals at the Math Olympiad. Asked the academic directors of these programs as to why the 2 IIT professors say, how come all these years you all were sort of not winning that many medals, but suddenly you all are all, the Indian team is winning all kinds of medals. And they say that we took past winners to come and be peer educators. So even in our ancient Gurukula system, peer education has a huge impact. Children learn from one another at very young ages. They learn from one another better than what they learn from a teacher. A teacher's good to now and then quiz and see what the status is, but peer education is extremely effective. So they use this idea of peer education for sex education. You have the RKSK uses peer educators. So the NGOs all train these peer educators to go out and train other peers. So you get gyan of sexuality and all of this from another 18-year-old or a 17-year-old. And parents are sidelined, teachers are sidelined. And just in case, God forbid, there is no peer educator, you of course have apps that are funded by the UNFPA. You have even apps, I'm sorry to say, have funded apps by the Niti Aayog. So all the dirty problems are outsourced to outsiders. So what you cannot do through the front door, you get it done to the back door. This is happening, right? The others are coming in, training the peer educators, using online platforms. So parents are sidelined. They don't know the difference between sex education and comprehensive sexuality education. Most parents think, okay, I don't want to talk about the birds and the bees, and maybe somebody else will, and I'm quite happy about it, and hopefully my child will be safe. That's not the case. So the long and short of it is this whole program is to create activists and not 21st century skills by any stretch of the imagination. The MGIEP itself says that all their, they haven't validated their results and whether they are really effective or not in their own literature. So they're just trying this big, large experiment, just like Bill Gates is, vaccinating everybody, seeing, what will happen to India, right? Using this as a lab. Similarly, and rewiring brains and figuring out, and they still don't know if it actually works, according to them. And a 2017 study found that SEL has no benefits. In fact, they found the opposite. They found people who went through SEL actually suffered more depression and anxiety. And it is sold as an elixir for solving all sorts of behavioral problems like bullying, hate crimes, educational underachievement, mental issues, and climate change. SEL will sort out all this. So this is a very important book. And just I wanted to make two points. There is a Population Foundation of India, another co-conspirator, if you will. J.R.D. Tata started it to bring down, globalists don't like people, too many people bothers them. Ratan Tata, the late Ratan Tata, has done a lot of good things, I'm sure, but was the chairman of the Population Foundation of India. They run CSC, Comprehensive Sexuality Education teacher training programs, and the Bharat Scouts have signed an MOU for a program called ARSH for You, Adolescent Sexual Health Education, something like that. ARSH for You, so the Scouts, the NCC, and all these Scouts and NCCs are people going into the army. We are in a very dangerous place. I mean, there are NGOs and the entire ecosystem that is working to take the minds of Indian children, and we hope you will do something, and we all will do something to stop it. Thank you.
मेरा नाम है डॉक्टर उपासना सिंह और मैं एक समाज सेवी हूँ। तो बहुत सारी चीज़ें मैंने सुनी और मेरा एक पॉइंट था विजया जी ने जो बोला, हमारे यहाँ पर जब बच्चा पैदा होता है तो परंपरा है भारत में ज़्यादातर मुझे लगता है प्रदेशों में कि 1.25 महीने तक माँ जो है वो घर से बाहर नहीं निकलती है, उस कमरे से बाहर नहीं निकलती है जहाँ पर वो बच्चे को जन्म देती है, और बच्चे को पूरी तरीके से माँ के साथ ही बांध के एक तरीके से रखा जाता है और उसके बाद ही उनको बाहर निकाला जाता है। और जो हमारी पाश्चात्य संस्कृति है जहाँ पर ये एक बात कही जाती है कि जैसे ही बच्चा पैदा होता है उसको तुरंत नर्सरी में रख दिया जाता है और माँ को स्ट्रिक्टली कह दिया जाता है कि आपको उसके साथ सोना नहीं है, आपको उसको अपने छाती से चिपकाना नहीं है, जिससे कि वो अच्छी तरीके से आगे चल के एक इंडिविजुअल पर्सनैलिटी बने। तो वो जो एक संस्कृति है पाश्चात्य, वो हमारे यहाँ भी बहुत ज़्यादा आ रही है। आजकल अगर आप देखें तो बच्चे को आया पालती है, या जैसे ही कोई बच्चा पैदा होता है तो कहते हैं कि आपने नर्स रखी है क्या। तो मतलब अब एक लग्जरी हो गया है और ये दिखावा हो गया है कि बच्चे को माँ नहीं पाल सकती है, और उसके लिए आया होना, उसके लिए कहीं भी जा रहे हैं, विदेश जा रहे हैं तो भी उनके साथ उनके आया ज़रूर जाएगी। तो आपने अपनी बुक में इस पर कुछ प्रकाश डाला है क्या? बिकॉज़ ये भी एक बहुत बड़ा इशू है जिस पे हमको थोड़ा ध्यान देने की ज़रूरत है हमारे समाज में।
उसके बारे में नहीं किया, पार्डन माय हिंदी। हमारा ध्यान ये है कि आउटसाइड मार्क्सिस्ट फोकस क्या है, इंस्टीट्यूशनल पेनिट्रेशन क्या है, ब्रेकिंग इंडिया फोर्स क्या है, वो तो अलग सब्जेक्ट है। यू कैन cover a lot more, लेकिन हमारा scope just institutional, the scope is just institutional penetration.
Thank you.
I just want to add one more thing. Rajiv ji talked about the theory of digestion. Similarly, he's got many theories which are forming a school of thought. So those of us who work with Rajiv ji closely are trained in Rajiv ji's school of thought as to how to look for digestion. So for example, in this book, you will see social emotional learning, where Sir talked about meditation and which improves the mind and all of that. So that is how it starts. Yeah, there is a bait and switch in the international programs. So if you look at the social emotional learning, the roots of it is digestion. So one line comes from Neem Karoli Baba. A Harvard scholar goes, Rajji's talked about that, goes to sits with the Neem Karoli Baba, learns everything from Neem Karoli Baba, and then initially gives attributes and then moves on to his own theory. And now Dan Goleman is his name, and he wrote Emotional Intelligence and all these things based on his experiences with Neem Karoli Baba, and then that eventually became social emotional learning, and he made a lot of money. Then on the other side, you have the Theosophists with Annie Besant and all these people who again digest Indian mind sciences and yoga practices, meditation, pranayama, all of that into Western, into the European occultists. They digested that, and then they used that for, there was an American who did it, who used it to train his baseball teams to win using these ideas, and eventually vanished, and the Indian sources vanished, and it became all rolled into social emotional learning. Initially, all these ideas were to improve the self, improve the mind, as Sir talked about. But now it is to control children, take data, so this is what we're bringing attention to. We are not against meditation and all these Indian practices. We just want everybody to be aware of the dangers of this hybridization who wins, who loses, and who's in danger.
One short question. More than the title, what stimulates me is critically examining contemporary educational trends and policies in India. How do you compare the West and us? You think we are doing well? We need to do more? Or we only ape them?
Actually, India is doing worse than it was. If you take where Jharkhand as an example, where all these policies of sex education started, they were the pioneers, if you will, of this. Steadily reading and writing, reading and language has been steadily dropping. All the states, and Niti Aayog measures this, everywhere. So we have four new subjects, SEL, CSE, GCE, and environmentalism, added to the curriculum, burdening the teachers, and our reading and writing and math skills have steadily come down by our own measurement. Okay, and the other thing is using these same behavioral neuroscience and psychology, these SEL type programs. China is using the same neuroscience, but to monitor and collecting data on their kids, but in STEM education, to make sure what problems challenge a child, how can we push them even more, things like that. So the same technology can be used, but different way to get better results.
Thank you so much. Can we have a big round of applause to summarize it?